To another video. This video is going to discuss part B of the last video I talked about in terms of argument. I left off ending on slide 23, so I'm going to start talking about slide 24 and the end of this PowerPoint for this video. So slide 24, I'm kind of going forward. So 25 talks about the thesis. There are three parts to the thesis. Part one is the qualifier. The qualifier kind of defines the scope of your claim, thinking about have you considered other valid arguments. So usually they're going to have some type of word such as although or while or despite the fact. Again, it's going to think about what other aspects of it have you thought about. This could be somebody said something, but in this case, again, this is an example from the essay I'm providing. It's while death with dignity and death with dignity. I have a hard time saying that. While death with dignity and suicide are vastly different, yet are often seen as similar. And so that's the beginning of a sentence. So they could be a full sentence, it could be partial of a sentence, something along those lines. So it's thinking about somebody else's perspective to think about that different viewpoint. After that, you're going to have the claim, the main point which you are asserting. This could be a sentence, it could be multiple sentences. Thinking about the claim or the argument in which you are supporting throughout your paper. So focus of the paper, what you assert to be true based on your reasoning. Claims cannot be statements of facts. So again, like I said, vanilla is the best ice cream flavor in the world. That's shouldn't be a claim. Again, because it's based on opinion, like I talked about in the last video. So the claim that she's saying, and this is a direct kind of duration of it. So she says, while death with dignity and suicide are vastly different, yet often seen as similar, this similarity causes citizens to rephrase from legalizing death with dignity and many patients from viewing as a morally respectable option. So again, she's analyzing how assisted suicide and death with dignity are similar and different from each other. She's kind of comparing and contrast them, but she's analyzing the impacts of the language of assisted suicide using versus death with dignity, been saying that by choosing to kill assisted suicide is maybe persuading other people who might think it is a viable option for them to not think about it and to have lots of judgment. That's the student's perspective. Okay, that's the student's argument, what they are saying. So this is their claim, and then you can think about revision. So should anything be revised from the qualifier, from the claim, from that thesis? And you can read it in the context of the full introduction if you want to when you go to the example essay, but thinking rhetorically, from a reader's perspective, do you understand this? Is there anything that should be changed? If so, why? But I do think it is a good representation of breaking out of the binary. Okay, it isn't a binary idea. And then you want to have some support. And in this particular example, the support actually is going before the qualifier and the claim, and it could go after, it could go before, you could go in the next paragraph, but it should be somewhere. So so having a supporting detail that is foreshadowing the argument, supporting the argument, easing into transition to body paragraphs or the thesis itself. And so, for example, this essay she said, according to Friesen's article, medically assisted dying and suicide, how are they different and how are they similar? So that's in quotation marks, so it's the title of the article. Death with dignity helps terminally ill patients to control the last few days of their lives, but suicide is commonly committed by mentally ill patients who do not want to live anymore. So she's analyzing how these terms are different, but she's also providing support to show that they are different and how they're different. And so this is somebody's a scholar, an actual published article that's credible and that's saying that. And so that's a really good example of support. It's not just her saying this, here's somebody else as well. And so you want to have all three somewhere. Again, you can play around with it. It doesn't have to be in the exact order. It doesn't have to be exactly how she does it in the example essay, but this is an example of how it could be done. And so you must have those, but not necessarily in order, like I just said. Revision, think about revision. Could this author have done anything to revise that thesis, revise the support, do anything in the order? As a reader, you could think about asking these questions and thinking about them in relation to your conflicts book entry. This is normally a conversation I would have in the classroom, but definitely think about it from a reader's perspective, as I've been talking about all semester. But that's kind of the general idea of your introduction to get you started. Interest, exigency, and thesis. Notice that it can be difficult to pack your argument into a single paragraph. I talked about in the last video that if you need to, you could have it 2 paragraphs, the introduction. The longer a paper typically is, the longer introduction typically can be, because you have more space and more room to expand on those ideas later on in the essay. So where there are 2 or 3 page paper, you know, you might not want to have more than 1 paragraph of introduction. If you have 5 to 6 pages, yeah, it probably can be. You don't want to have like your whole paper the introduction. You got to go somewhere with it, but it can be more than 1 paragraph if you want to. But keep challenging your ideas. Think rhetorically. How's your reader going to perceive your own idea, your writing choices? It's just like I'm asking you to analyze this essay as the example essays work. Body paragraph should support your arguments with using evidence such as observation and research and reasoning. Don't write a 5-paragraph essay. So what I like about the example essay here that we're reading for essay number 3, again, is it's not a 5-paragraph essay. So if you're confused about how that, you know, how she's doing that, think about, you know, read the last sentence of a paragraph and think about how is it building into the next paragraph. Kind of, you could summarize briefly what each paragraph is talking about and see how it builds onto the next paragraph. And you can also do those with your own, okay? So this, pay attention if you're struggling with writing, breaking out of that 5-paragraph essay, definitely look at these example essays to see how they're breaking out of that. Comes a counter argument. It problematizes the claim. Could they, you know, think about another perspective, demonstrates that you're unbiased and you have thought about the process. So it shouldn't just be an opposite perspective, but it should be another perspective. Doesn't really matter where that is. It should be somewhere in the body paragraphs of your essay, somewhere. Yeah, you have a lot of freedom to kind of go about doing that. You should at least have 1 counter argument in your essay. What could the counter argument of the example essay we're reading, and does she have a counter argument, and what is it? Can you identify it? I'm not going to give you that one, but can you find it? Conclusion. Once you get there, should restate your thesis, present 1 or 2 general sentences which accurately summarize your arguments which support the thesis, provide a warning or consequences of not to follow the thesis, and or show the reader how the reader will benefit from accepting your thesis. So generally, you should, for your conclusion, leave your reader knowing something, have something to leave them with. Don't just stop, but leave them something to leave them with and feel like it's a concluded, it's done. And so these are some ideas for that. And again, like I said in the last video, come back to this PowerPoint. Please come back to this PowerPoint, like I said in that last video. Don't simply participate and watch this video and then, you know, leave it be. Please come back if you're having trouble. These can really help you. So let me know if you have any questions, and I can definitely help with that if needed.